Could anyone imagine that two students at Stanford University would make a huge internet company? This company is Google. Today, Google answers over 8.5 billion searches every day. People even use to Google as a verb. In this video, we look at the story of two young people with a big idea. They start in a small school project. They add courage. They change the entire world. Do you want to see how a simple garage becomes the center of a digital empire? Do you want to know why Google's look is so simple? Let's begin. Getting to know the heroes and the call to adventure. When we talk about tech giants, we often imagine a big office, a multi-level hierarchy, and hundreds of staff who work on all sorts of projects. But at the beginning of Google's story, there were just two Stanford University graduate students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, united by the desire to solve an interesting research problem about structuring Internet information. In 1995, when they first met, each of them already had a good base in computer science and mathematics. The most important thing was that both wanted to use all available scientific methods and programming methods to make Internet search better. It is interesting that they did not meet in a classroom or a lab, but during a tour for new students. There is a story that from the very start, they had a discussion about how to interpret hyperlink structure in the web. At that time, the web was considered a promising place, but many IT specialists and students were working on other parts of it, from email improvements to browser interfaces. Larry and Sergey understood that the real power of the web is not just in the number of pages, but in how they are linked together. This hyperlink model became the main focus of their research. Often, a call to adventure in business or science is a problem that nobody can solve properly or wants to solve. For Larry and Sergey, that problem was, how do we know which web pages are truly important and which are not? Although there were big portals that tried to organize content, their mechanisms were not good enough. Too much focus on keywords led to spam, when site owners stuffed pages with the same words. Meanwhile, users needed a fast and accurate system for finding information. For Brin and Page, the challenge was to use ideas from graph theory and scientific paper citations. In academia, the importance of a paper depends on how many times and by whom it is cited. The same idea can be used for the web. If many sites link to a specific page, maybe that page is valuable. That idea became the basic hypothesis they wanted to test, not just in theory, but also in practice, by creating a prototype. A call to adventure is not always a big idea that is ready from the start. Sometimes it is a small insight that can grow into a big project. At Stanford, many students looked for research topics that could help industry. Larry and Sergey chose link analysis, but nobody thought that one day it would become a giant business with billions in revenue. At that time, they only wanted to see if search results could be improved by looking at the weight of links. We must not forget that Stanford is a place full of talent, with labs, server access, and supportive professors. All this gave the two young researchers the means to try their experiments. But no resources would help if Page and Brin did not have the passion and persistence that overcame the doubts of conservative academics and competition from existing companies. When you have the motivation and faith in your idea, the call to adventure is no longer just a challenge, but a strong force that can change an entire field. The first step and the birth of an idea. In the academic world, people often say that success starts with asking the right question. For Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the key question was, how can we reliably measure the authority or importance of a web page? Inspired by the model of scientific paper citations, they began to study how some sites link to others, thinking that the number and quality of external links might show relevance. This idea led them to create BackRub, the first version of their search engine. BackRub worked by crawling pages and recording where the links came from and went to. This is how the idea of PageRank was created. An algorithm named after Larry Page's last name, but also referring to ranking pages. The idea was that a page linked by many trustworthy sources would have more weight. It was not just about the number of links, but also the quality of the linking sites. This gave them a unique system that was different from other search engines, making the ranking more accurate and more useful for users who wanted specific information. But an algorithm was only part of the story. Technically, Page and Brin faced the problem of storing and processing huge amounts of data. In the late 1990s, the Internet already had millions of pages, and constantly refreshing data on links demanded large computing power. At first, they used Stanford's servers, which was not always welcome because the university had limited resources. Sometimes, they had to borrow extra hard drives from friends to keep the growing link database. This informal way of working is typical for early startups, where people use any means they can to make their idea work. Why did BackRub become Google? One important reason was that they wanted a new name that sounded global. The word Google, 10 to the 100th power, fit well, suggesting the enormous quantity of online data and the big dreams of the project. At the same time, the name Google, with its simple spelling, though a bit different from Google, got the attention of programmers and early tech enthusiasts. Moving from a university research project to a real company required more than just technical brilliance. They had to form a legal entity, find funds to pay for servers and staff, and rent an office. Two graduate students, once living in dorms, had to face the business world. In their case, the decision to create a startup happened partly because the project got so big that staying within the university was no longer practical. But also, at Stanford, they found mentors, professors, and investors who believed that PageRank was promising for the future. Another big factor was how test users reacted to BackRub. They were surprised by the high quality of the search. In an era of spam and questionable results, PageRank gave strong relevance. Larry and Sergey realized that people outside of universities also wanted their technology. So they decided to aim for a bigger audience, to think about scaling up, brand building, and the first investments. That is how a student project, born from curiosity and research, grew into the outline of a future search giant. Obstacles on the way. Every success story has moments of doubt and problems that can stop progress. Google was no exception. In the late 1990s, many search engines already existed: Yahoo, AltaVista, Excite, Lycos, and others. They had big budgets, media support, and lots of users. Investors saw Google as just another search engine that might not really break through. Page and Brin had to prove that PageRank gave a real advantage. Besides that, Page and Brin had very little money at first. They used university hardware, help from friends, and tiny savings. They needed funding for lawyers, an office, and salaries. Competing with big players without money was very difficult. Another challenge was user trust. In the late 1990s, a search engine usually meant a big portal page with news, ads, and many links. Google's simple page, a white background, one box for queries, and two buttons, seemed strange. Some people thought the page had not fully loaded, but over time, that style, focused on speed and convenience, became a special trademark for those who were tired of information overload. Technical development was also hard. To index the ever-growing Internet, they needed more servers and people who knew how to manage them. Back then, there were no big cloud solutions, so Google had to rely on its own hardware. Another barrier was the idea of a portal. Competitors wanted users to stay on their sites longer by providing news, email, and so on. Google did the opposite with a simple front page and minimal distractions. Many investors asked, "How will you make money if you do not show ads everywhere?" Early on, people doubted it, but eventually it became clear that user focus was the real key. Finally, big companies could have copied the idea. As a small startup, Google was vulnerable. Page and Brin tried to keep control and independence, so looking for investors was a delicate balance between getting money and preserving their rights. All these factors made Google's start tough. But these trials also shaped the company's culture. Every big challenge was seen as something that needed a creative solution. This early struggle built a strong foundation for future wins. A key turning point and recognition. A turning point often comes when a major investor believes in the project. For Google, it was Andy Bechtolsheim, co-founder of Sun Microsystems, who saw their potential and wrote a $100,000 check even before the company had a bank account. This trust was not only about covering initial expenses, but also signaled to other venture capitalists that Google had something special. This investment helped Page and Brin register Google as a legal entity, rent an office, and expand the team. At first, they worked in the garage of Susan Wojcicki, who would become head of YouTube, but they quickly attracted talented engineers who liked the new approach to website ranking. By mid-1998, more and more tech enthusiasts and journalists talked about Google. Its search results were more accurate. Word of mouth spread rapidly. Have you tried Google? It's better than the rest. The press sometimes compared Google's simple design to the busy portals filled with ads. People liked the uncluttered design and relevant results. The next big step was launching AdWords, now Google Ads. Google allowed advertisers to place short ads related to the user's keywords. This format was good for everyone. Users saw ads relevant to them, and advertisers paid for clicks from an interested audience. This gave Google a strong financial basis and helped it invest in infrastructure. That was how Google went from a promising idea to a real market player. More offices opened, the team grew, and a unique company culture took shape, focusing on innovation and user experience. Now the media, tech sector, and regular people saw that Google was setting a new quality standard in search. The next ambitious moves no longer faced the same doubt, because the company had a loyal user base and real achievements behind it. Growth strategy and innovations. Once it was strong in search and ads, Google began to expand its ecosystem. Management knew that people do not just make queries. They send emails, share documents, watch videos, use maps, and run mobile apps. One of the first products outside search was Gmail. At a time when free email services offered very small space, Google surprised everyone by offering gigabytes of storage. At first, people thought it was an April Fool's joke. But then they moved to Gmail because it solved the constant problem of a full inbox. Later, Google showed how it approached innovation through its own culture. There was the 20% rule, letting engineers spend part of their work time on extra projects. This principle was initially informal, but led to many products, like Google News and Google Translate. Encouraging experiments let the company test wild ideas that sometimes grew into important services. Another major move was buying YouTube in 2006. Instead of competing with Google Video, the company took a leap and acquired YouTube, a rising video platform. Some said the deal was too expensive, but YouTube became a key part of Google, with a huge global user base. A special chapter in Google's growth is the mobile market. By purchasing a small company called Android, Google turned it into an open-source OS used by many smartphone and tablet makers. This gave Google a big mobile audience and let it promote its apps on devices worldwide. So, Google did not just do search, it built a full product ecosystem: email, maps, office software, video, a mobile OS. All of it was tied to the main goal of organizing information. Meanwhile, the company kept improving its search algorithms and refining its advertising system, which stayed a main source of income. Balancing user convenience, constant experiments, and buying promising projects put Google at the forefront of tech innovation. Global impact and the company mission. When an internet company grows to Google's size, we ask, what is its role worldwide? From the start, Google had a mission: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. This is not just a slogan. Almost all Google services involve searching, storing, processing, or presenting data. Google's global impact is seen in how the brand became nearly the same as searching online. In most countries, except a few local markets like China, Google has a huge market share, sometimes over 90%. With that reach comes many possibilities and many concerns. Antitrust regulators in the US and EU watch to see if Google abuses this dominance by favoring its own services in results or by gathering huge amounts of user data. Privacy is a hot issue. Google collects a lot of data, from search queries to location, via Android or Maps, from emails, Gmail, to watched videos, YouTube. The company says it uses data to improve services and ads, but critics worry that so much user information is risky. However, Google's social contributions are hard to dismiss. Projects like Google Scholar help students and researchers find scientific work. YouTube is not only for fun, but also for education. Google Maps make traveling and logistics simpler. The company invests in infrastructure projects, tries to improve internet access in remote areas, and supports learning initiatives by giving free collaboration tools to schools. For a long time, Google's cultural code was symbolized by the informal phrase, "Don't be evil." It indicated that the company wanted to protect user interests, avoid aggressive ads, and be ethical in its technology. But as Google got bigger, it became harder to keep the image of a good giant, and people watch every step. Still, transparency, user focus, and innovation remain key parts of Google's public image. Hence, Google's global impact brings big benefits to society and big concerns about monopoly and data collection. The company shapes our digital future, while the world wonders how to balance convenience, security, and fair competition. Transformation into Alphabet and the future. In 2015, Google reorganized into the Alphabet, holding to separate its core business, search, ads, Android, YouTube, Gmail, etc., from more experimental work, Waymo, Verily, X, Calico, and more. The idea was to give moonshot projects the freedom to develop, without the constraints of the main advertising business. So Google, while still the flagship, became part of a broader ecosystem that tests ideas in many fields, from biotechnology to driverless cars. This move shows a strategic mindset. No matter what happens with search or ads, Alphabet aims at many new niches and technologies. Today, under Alphabet, there is quantum computing, AI, internet infrastructure projects in faraway regions, and even aging research. Google is a symbol of how a startup in a dorm can grow into a global company that reaches almost every aspect of digital life. In the future, Google and Alphabet will face big challenges. Technology changes fast, so they must keep making new products. Regulators demand transparency, data security, and fair competition. Meanwhile, people want convenient tech solutions, and if Google balances innovation, privacy, and user comfort, it will remain very powerful. Google's story is not just about PageRank and good search. It shows how scientific curiosity plus business skill can create a global ecosystem of services. Even though the company has gone beyond just search, its main mission, to organize the world's information and make it accessible, is still relevant. The question is whether a giant structure like Alphabet can preserve the original spark that fueled the startup. Given the big resources, bold projects, and drive to explore, it seems likely that Google will continue to surprise us, shaping the digital future of the world.